Man, when it rains, it pours. I mean, that's not necessarily always the case with the weather in Seattle. It does rain a lot, but it doesn't really downright pour all that often. Still, though, with the Seattle Kraken this season, when things could go bad, they have gone bad. And that just continues tonight, where the Kraken enter the night on a 5-game losing streak. But the worst is that before the game, they announced that Jerad McCann, the team's leading points and goal scorer, is headed to the IR. And then they go and lose to make it a 6-game losing streak. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Kraken do lose their 6th in a row, but it's a close one this time, as they end up falling 3-2 to the Boston Bruins in overtime. A game where, let's just say, maybe having your leading points and goal scorer would have potentially helped get this into a win. I guess the silver lining to the Jerad McCann news, though it's more aluminum foil than real silver, is the fact that it sounds like this isn't going to be a particularly long stint for him on the IR, which means it still does have to be at least a week, but he could be back missing just a couple games. Obviously, though, that isn't really going to help the Kraken much in the short term, and especially not in this game against Boston, where they certainly could have used him. Otherwise, the Kraken play an absolutely fantastic game against a pretty good team, and do end up getting a point in the standings, which may not matter a whole lot at the end of the season, but it does at least make for an exciting game in this one tonight. Or, I guess, last night as of when you're watching this. I mean, maybe even longer than that, I don't know when you're watching this, but probably last night. I guess on the one hand, this whole losing your leading point scorer thing to injury is something the Kraken have become accustomed to here in their first season, where early on they lost Eberle for a few games while he led the team in points. Then in January, just a month ago, the Kraken did put Jaden Schwartz on IR while he was leading the team in points, and now it's Jerad McCann's turn. And of course, with the unexpectedly bad goaltending and defense at the start of the season, not to mention the special teams pretty much the whole time, and also losing fan favorite Brandon Tanev for the entire year, the Kraken are also pretty used to adversity in general this year. And the Kraken were going to have to overcome their fair share of adversity just in this game specifically. Even outside of losing Jerad McCann just before the game, early on, Gio takes a tripping call to send the Bruins to a very early power play. And although the Kraken do kill it off pretty well to start with about 40 seconds left in it, Larson gets caught for high sticking, and this time it's a 2-minute minor as the Kraken are going to have to face 40 seconds of 5-on-3 and then another 4 minutes of power play. Or, I guess, more 3.5 minutes, but still it's 6 minutes of power play for the Bruins pretty much to start the game. Something that afterwards Hackstall would call not the best formula to start a game. Although the Kraken are able to kill off that 5-on-3 time and then back to just a normal 5-on-4, they get a shorthanded chance 2-on-1, which is shut down well by McAvoy. But then another shorthanded chance, it's Sheahan carrying the puck into the offensive zone. He pulls up and passes it back to a wide open Gio coming into the offensive zone all by himself. He has all the time in the world to pick his spot, take his shot, and score to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead with another shorthanded goal, the second one for the captain in just a couple of games. And not only that, but it's also the first ever shorthanded goal at home in Seattle Kraken history. And I know what you're thinking, didn't Blackwell score a shorthanded goal at home earlier on this season? You said in one of your videos that he did. Yes, at the time that was the first ever shorthanded goal at home that Blackwell scored, but apparently that was later reversed in official scorekeeping, so this one now becomes the official first ever shorthanded goal for the Kraken, and it's certainly not one that's coming back. Plus, to add the cherry on top of all of it, the Kraken are also able to kill off the remaining 2 minutes of Bruins power play to successfully get through these early 6 minutes of PK time, not only not having given up a goal, but actually scoring one of their own to have that 1-0 lead. The Kraken do, at least slightly anyway, I would say, get the better of a few minutes of 5-on-5 time, even with few shots on goal, before Wennberg accidentally removes the helmet of McAvoy with his stick, which, accident or not, that is pretty clearly another high sticking call and another Bruins power play. Come on, guys, we just told Larson to keep his stick on the ice. You've got to be able to keep your stick at least below head level. On what is already their 4th power play of the game, the Bruins do put one off the crossbar and miss what is basically an empty net look, but otherwise the Kraken are able to kill it off well, and we get to the end of a fourth power play with the score still 1-0 Kraken. Then after another brief window of 5-on-5 time, this time it's McAvoy's turn to go to the box for a high sticking call, and the Kraken are gonna get their first power play of the game. Okay, seriously guys, we just got done telling them a couple of times that you have to keep your sticks on the ice. I mean, I know it's the first time we're telling you specifically, but weren't you the one that just had your helmet taken off? I feel like you probably should have known better. For the Kraken, it's an okay power play. They do have some time in the offensive zone and get a couple of shots on net, one of which is able to leak through Allmark, but not far enough to really get a second chance on, and he's able to fall on it, so the Kraken power play does eventually end up getting killed off. Next, it's a couple more minutes of relatively uneventful 5-on-5 time, except for right at the end of it when Grubauer makes an absolutely spectacular toe save one-on-one against Hall, as Hall tries to dangle it around him and into the net. Grubauer obviously able to come up with it to keep it out of the net, but then the Bruins are going to get a fifth power play of this first period alone, as Hall gets interfered with by Larson, so Larson back to the box and the Bruins back to the man advantage. Early in this Bruins power play, the Bruins do get a pretty good chance on goal when a pass across in front of it gets deflected to the net, and Grubauer is somehow able to get that same toe that he just used to make the save on Hall to the corner of the net to make the save on this one as well, once again coming up with the big save to keep the Bruins off the board. And the Kraken are also able to kill off the remaining Bruins power play to get to the end of a fifth successful penalty kill already this game. However, just as the power play comes to an end, the Bruins catch a lucky bounce as a puck bounces off the end boards and over the Kraken net out in front, where Lauzon, who has played much better of late, tries to whack it out of the air back across over the net, but instead isn't able to get enough of it and puts it right onto the goal line, where DeBrusk is able to tap it in to tie up the game at 1. And eventually, that is how an eventful first period would end. We start off the second with a little bit of comedy, though you could make the argument with 12 minutes of power play and 10 minutes of power play for the Bruin in the first that the entire first period was comedy. Either way, we start out the second period with a pretty funny play that sees both Alexiak and Blackwell end up in the Kraken net behind Grubauer. Funnily enough, both of those players having played their college hockey in Boston, or at least the Boston area anyway. It's certainly not the prescribed way to play defense, but I suppose if you just fill the net with defensive players and they can't get the puck across the line, then that's one way to do it. Fortunately, the Kraken don't end up having to test this new style of defense, as the Bruins aren't able to get a shot off on goal. And then, not long after, it's right back to special teams, as Nosek gets caught for high sticking on Austin Czarnik, and the Kraken are going to get their second power play of the game. Okay, seriously, that's been 2 now for both of you. You've got to keep your sticks on the ice. And wasn't he just on your team earlier this season? Come on, guys, help me out here. Hit each other one more time in the face with your sticks, and I swear, I cannot be held responsible for what I'm going to have to do. As for this second Kraken power play, however, well, all I'm going to say is that Grubauer comes up with a couple of big saves on shorthanded chances, as the Kraken eventually are able to survive their own power play, with the game still tied at 1. Back to 5-on-5 though, not long after the Kraken power play, the Bruins win a faceoff in the Kraken defensive zone. The defense gets crossed up a bit, and McAvoy finds Pasternak on a very nice pass, and the one-timer finds the back of the net past Grubauer, who really there's not much he could have done more to make this save. It's just a good pass and an even better shot to give the Bruins the 2-1 lead. The Kraken are able to respond with a few minutes of offensive zone time through the middle of the period, but just aren't getting very many shots to the net. And eventually, the Bruins are able to respond with a pretty good shift, getting some good offensive zone time of their own, but they go full Kraken, not taking shots off on net themselves, and eventually the Kraken are able to get the puck out of the defensive zone, take advantage of a sloppy Bruins line change to get a 3-on-1 opportunity. Eberle, carrying the puck into the offensive zone, just kind of glides up to the net, deciding not to pass it, and at the last second goes backhand and into the net to give the Kraken their second goal of the game and tie this game at 2. And surprisingly, Eberle not getting robbed on this one, getting it into the back of the net, though I have to say, as it became more obvious that he was looking to take the shot, I was kind of expecting him to somehow have this one saved, with Allmark coming up with a spectacular save of some kind. And the Kraken nearly add to it right away, pressing right back into the offensive zone off the faceoff and actually getting shots off on goal this time. However, the Bruins are able to reverse that momentum, and Grubauer has to come up big at the other end as well. That Bruins push is also quickly brought to an end though, again thanks to another high sticking call on Nosek. Okay, that's it. That's the 5th high sticking call of this game between you two, and you, sir, specifically your second one of this period alone. So you know what? We're just gonna go to lead sticks from now on. I know, player safety, and lead's probably not particularly safe, but we gotta find some way to weigh your sticks down so you can keep them on the ice and out of each other's faces. This Kraken power play late in the second period is better than their last one, though pretty much only because they don't allow any shorthanded chances for the Bruins, and not really because they create any goal scoring opportunities of their own. Gio does get one shot to the net, but it doesn't really have any deflection or screen to give it a chance of going in. And so as that Kraken power play is killed off successfully by the Bruins, without too much trouble, we do get to the end of the second period tied at 2, just as we got to the end of the first period tied at 1. So maybe we'll now get to the end of the third tied at 3. Well, we would get to the end of the third still tied, but it wouldn't be at 3, as the third period is relatively tame considering how the rest of this game is gone. There aren't any power plays to speak of, and really not all that much dangerous scoring opportunities at either end of the ice, as both teams are much more interested in playing solid defense and responsible to not make mistakes, allowing that third goal to go in. I mean, the Kraken do have a pretty bad defensive zone turnover early in the third, but are able to survive it thanks to a big save by Grubauer bailing them out of that situation, which ends up becoming a pretty big save in the course of the game, considering we end up getting to overtime without another goal being scored. Meanwhile, at the other end of the ice, Appleton does have a couple of pretty good scoring chances that he just misses on over the course of the period, and then has a third one that is saved by Allmark, who also comes up with a big save here to get the Bruins to overtime. Unfortunately, the first shot on goal in 3-on-3 overtime does go into the Kraken net on a tight angle off the stick of DeBrusk, on a shot that Grubauer just has to be able to come up with a save on. It is a pretty soft goal, though to be fair, it has to be said that while Grubauer does kind of lose the game for the Kraken here in overtime, he's also the primary reason they even got to overtime in the first place, with the Bruins significantly outshooting the Kraken in this one, 39-27. Grubauer coming up with 36 saves on those 39 shots. And again, especially in the second period, a couple of pretty big saves at that. This is now, though, 2 of the last 3 games for Grubauer, this one and the one against the Flames, where he's been the best player on the ice for the Kraken, which is at least a good sign going forward. And if he can build off of this going over the rest of the season, that at least gives the Kraken a pretty good chance going into next year, if he can get off to a hot start, having more experience now behind this defense. Other than Grubauer, obviously the penalty kill also had a spectacular game, going 5 for 5 and also getting that shorthanded goal, which did also earn Gio a star in this game, he and Grubauer getting the second and third stars, DeBrusk with 2 goals getting the first star, and a somewhat under the radar guy that I thought had a pretty good game in this game for the Kraken would be Riley Sheahan, who had a couple of pretty good scoring opportunities, especially late in this game. Appleton as well had a pretty good third period, but Sheahan I thought was somewhat of a difference maker throughout this game on that fourth line. For the Kraken as a whole, I do think they were able to build off of that good first half of their last game, even though the first half of it was terrible, and this was a pretty full 60 minutes in a game against a good team that I think they can be proud of and hopefully build on going into the future. Yes, the Kraken do now lose their 6th game in a row for the 3rd time this season, but it's still a Bruins team that is pretty good and looking to fight for a playoff spot, so again, I think a pretty good performance from the Kraken, and especially Grubauer, who hopefully can continue to look more consistent as this season goes on. Aside from that, the Kraken do now have a couple of days off between each of their next few games that can hopefully give McCann a chance to get back sooner rather than later and not miss too many games for the Kraken, as he's been having a fantastic season. Not that you need to know that, since he's the Kraken leading goal scorer and points producer at this point, but we'd like to see him back in this lineup sooner rather than later. With that though, please do let me know what you thought of this game down in the comment section, and let me know if you think I missed anything. And until next time, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And as always, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.